This research paper explores the growing trend of digital news consumption, focusing on the rise of independent newsletters curated by professional journalists. These newsletters, facilitated by publishing platforms like Substack, represent a new form of curated news that combines human expertise with algorithmic processes. The study delves into the workflows and thought processes of journalists in selecting and presenting news for their newsletters, emphasizing the importance of their prior experience, internalization of subjectivity and readability, and their understanding of reader interests. The paper contrasts these findings with the workings of algorithms, highlighting the differences between how machines understand reader predispositions and how a human chooses content for another. It examines how human curation is not entirely human, as algorithms play a necessary part in the hybrid and evolving workflows behind journalists' news curation. Similarly, algorithmic processes are dependent on the human in the loop. The study's findings underscore the importance of hybrid curation, where technology supports the work of expert journalists, and provide design insights for enhancing this collaboration. By shedding light on the role of journalists' expertise in news curation, this research contributes to our understanding of the interplay between human and algorithmic aggregation in the context of digital news consumption. The online news ecosystem is characterized by the interplay between individual content producers, journalists, and intermediaries such as algorithmic aggregators and social media platforms. Journalists play a crucial role in navigating this ecosystem, and manually curated newsletters have emerged as a means for them to maintain editorial freedom and generate income. These newsletters offer diverse perspectives and unique content to readers, contrasting with algorithmic aggregators like Google News and Apple News, which rely on automated crawlers to collect news from thousands of sources. Algorithmic aggregators select and rank news stories based on factors such as prominence, authoritativeness, and freshness, often resulting in a popularity bias towards well-known events and stories. Hybrid curation, where algorithms support existing journalistic practices, has gained traction, with mainstream news organizations investing in email-based newsletters on various topics. The growing popularity of newsletters underscores the importance of understanding how journalists curate news and how algorithms can complement their efforts. By examining the interplay between human and algorithmic curation, this research highlights the potential for more personalized and diverse content to be delivered to readers. The findings have significant implications for the future of news curation, emphasizing the need for a nuanced understanding of the complex relationships between journalists, algorithms, and readers in the online news ecosystem. News curation is a complex process that involves both algorithmic and human-centric approaches. In the realm of online newsletters, understanding the socio-technical contexts in which journalists operate is crucial. Despite the rise of algorithmic aggregation, journalistic values such as diversity, novelty, and authoritativeness remain essential. However, algorithms used in platforms like Google News and Bing News favor popular and fresh content, leading to biases like popularity bias, homogeneity bias, and coverage bias. These biases can undermine journalistic values and result in a narrow range of perspectives being presented to users. In contrast, human journalists take a more nuanced approach to news curation, incorporating their subjective judgment to uphold values like diversity and novelty. This highlights the need for technologies that support journalists' workflows while preserving these essential values. Independent publishing platforms like Substack, which allow journalists to curate news from a wide range of publishers, present both challenges and opportunities for technological support. When designing new technologies, it is essential to understand the journalist's socio-technical contexts. Research in journalism and HCI has shown the importance of acknowledging and integrating journalistic judgment into new technologies. For instance, Bucher's work demonstrated the interplay between journalists and algorithms in determining relevance and newsworthiness. This study contributes to the ongoing discourse on the intersection of journalism and technology, highlighting the need for a balanced approach that leverages the strengths of both algorithmic aggregation and human judgment in news curation. This research paper delves into the practices and workflows of journalists involved in curating newsletters, with a particular focus on their selection and aggregation of news stories from various sources. The study is based on in-depth interviews with 10 participants who collectively manage 11 different newsletters, chosen for their diverse experience in journalism, geographical focus, and the topics they cover. The interviews aimed to understand the journalists' daily work, including their use of technological tools and other resources during the curation process. Factors they consider when aggregating stories, the most challenging and important parts of the process, and their reflective practice of understanding their readership were key areas of inquiry. The data collected from these interviews was analyzed using grounded theory, an inductive and interpretive method. 3 authors participated in the coding process, developing a preliminary codebook, refining and editing codes, and finalizing categories and themes. This led to the identification of high-level themes such as story aggregation and value addition. The findings highlight how journalists navigate the news ecosystem, influenced by factors like journalistic experience, readers' interests, and subjective judgments. The study provides insights into the complex interplay between journalists and algorithms in the curation of newsletters, contributing to the body of work on integrating algorithmic outputs in journalistic workflows. In the realm of news curation, journalists' workflows exhibit consistency across geographical regions and content domains. They leverage both mainstream original content producers, such as The New York Times, and intermediary platforms like Twitter or Google News to aggregate a diverse set of stories. Journalists consider factors such as topic, perspective, credibility, and authority when evaluating stories for aggregation. They then iteratively select a smaller set of stories that form a coherent compilation in their newsletter edition, adding value through context, summaries, or links to other relevant stories. The study highlights the importance of navigating the news ecosystem, with journalists relying on high-recognition publishers for quality and editorial control. Each journalist has preferred venues they repeatedly engage with, depending on the domain of their newsletter. They visit these websites multiple times a day to check for new stories, using them as tickers for updates. However, the research is based on a small sample of 10 journalists, excluding those who curate newsletters from a single publication. All participants had many years of experience, which may have influenced their stable set of practices. The study focuses on English-language news curation, ignoring potential differences in other languages. It also overlooks demand-side comparisons between journalist-curated and algorithmically aggregated news. In the realm of news curation for newsletters, journalists rely heavily on their professional judgment and expertise to select stories. However, they also leverage various digital tools and platforms to aid in this process. News aggregators like Google News play a critical role as a professional resource, providing access to a wide range of publishers. Social media platforms such as Twitter serve as top channels for news consumption, although journalists are aware of the limitations and biases inherent in these algorithms. To counter these biases, particularly the popularity bias that can disproportionately represent certain news topics, journalists actively avoid selecting top stories recommended by Google News or trending on Twitter. Instead, they opt for a more nuanced approach that seeks novelty and serendipity in their story selection. This approach enables them to provide readers with unique perspectives and insights that might not be readily available through automated aggregators. The use of search and filter functionalities provided by Google News is another strategy employed by journalists to offset algorithmic biases. By actively using these filters, they can discover stories on specific topics from atypical sources, leading to a more diverse range of content in their newsletters. Overall, this section highlights the complex interplay between human judgment and digital tools in the curation of news content. It emphasizes the importance of balancing algorithmic recommendations with editorial expertise to create engaging and informative newsletters. In this section, the paper delves into the workflows of journalists in news curation, focusing on their strategies for overcoming algorithmic biases and guiding factors that influence their decisions. Journalists employ various methods to bypass algorithmic limitations, such as using Twitter lists to streamline their timeline and filter out irrelevant content. They also rely on their professional experience and knowledge of credible sources, often favoring stories written by domain experts over those from popular mainstream producers. When selecting stories, journalists consider factors like the reputation of the source, the quality of information backed by multiple sources, and the presence of quotes from independent experts or citations to peer-review research. Their ability to identify patterns across different stories and contextualize them within larger narratives adds significant value to the curation process. This skill is particularly important as it helps connect seemingly disparate stories and provide readers with a more comprehensive understanding of current events. The interests of readers also play a crucial role in guiding journalists' curation. They aim to understand the reader's frame of mind, much like selling chocolates, to ensure that the curated content resonates with them. This involves understanding what topics are relevant and engaging for their audience and curating accordingly. Overall, the paper highlights the importance of human judgment and expertise in news curation, emphasizing that while algorithms can aggregate content, they cannot replace the nuanced decision-making processes of experienced journalists. In the realm of digital journalism, content curation for newsletters is a complex process that involves understanding the audience and their diverse interests. Unlike algorithmic aggregators, individual content publishers lack access to detailed feedback on reader interests, relying on occasional comments and proactive outreach to understand their audience. Journalists emphasize the importance of reader-friendliness in their newsletters, making news stories consumable and engaging by providing summaries and highlights that cater to different attention spans. The selection of news stories is often influenced by personal taste and context, with a focus on traditional news values such as importance, impact, and interest. However, this can vary greatly between journalists, with some prioritizing stories about powerful individuals, while others prefer timeless criteria. In terms of curating for a diverse audience, journalists face challenges in balancing the interests of different groups. They attempt to ensure each edition contains an assortment of stories that cater to various interests, including light and fun content to counterbalance serious news. The lack of feedback and the reliance on taste-based judgment in curation creates a unique challenge for these journalists, who must consider factors such as geographical location, age, and professional background when selecting and summarizing news stories. In a recent study, researchers explored the workflows of journalists in news curation by conducting interviews with 10 journalists worldwide who curate newsletters. They found that journalists' prior experiences and interests significantly influence their curation practices, and they use algorithms to find stories for their newsletters. Journalists consider factors such as timeliness, prominence, and style of coverage when selecting stories, actively evaluating the perspectives covered. This contrasts with algorithmic aggregators, which base their judgments on indirect metrics like popularity. The research highlights the potential benefits of hybrid workflows that combine human judgment with algorithmic capabilities. While algorithms can process large volumes of data, they are prone to biases and lack the active influence of a journalist in determining what is newsworthy for their readers. The study suggests that incorporating algorithms into journalists' existing workflows could enhance the efficiency and quality of news curation. However, it also emphasizes the importance of understanding and critically analyzing the judgment-rendering capacity of both humans and algorithms, as these judgments reflect their social, economical, and organizational contexts. This section of the research paper delves into the role of algorithms and gatekeepers in news dissemination, focusing on how they shape public attention to news information. It highlights the shift from traditional gatekeeping by journalists to algorithmic gatekeeping by platforms like Google, which now plays a significant role in curating news content for users. The paper also explores the impact of social media on news consumption, with a particular emphasis on Twitter's influence on the global news agenda. The study further examines the resurgence of newsletters as a means of independent journalism, with many local journalists leveraging this format to produce important coverage. Moreover, it touches upon the use of user-generated content in journalistic practice, and the challenges associated with identifying credible sources within such content. The paper also addresses the issue of fake news and misinformation, discussing how these issues can be exacerbated by algorithmic recommendation systems. It underscores the importance of understanding the role of these systems in shaping public discourse and influencing news consumption patterns. In terms of methodology, the paper employs a mixed method approach, combining qualitative and quantitative analysis to understand the impact of algorithms and gatekeepers on news dissemination. It draws on previous studies in the field, including research on news framing, media technologies, and computational journalism. The findings of the study suggest that algorithms have become integral to news curation, with Google News playing a pivotal role in this process. However, the paper also notes the potential pitfalls of relying heavily on algorithms, such as amplifying misinformation and reinforcing echo chambers. The resurgence of newsletters is seen as a promising development for independent journalism, offering an alternative to traditional news sources and social media platforms. The paper concludes by emphasizing the need for further research into the interplay between algorithms, gatekeepers, and news consumption. It calls for a deeper understanding of how these factors influence public discourse and shape our perception of reality. A codebook derived from the analysis of interview transcripts reveals 5 key themes in the workflows and decision-making processes of journalists in news curation. Navigating content producers, navigating intermediaries, context dependence, readers' interests, and journalistic experience. Navigating content producers, accounting for 16.3% of the codes, involves manual processes, preferred publishers, regular news cycle updates, unconventional sources, and awareness of algorithmic biases. Journalists heavily rely on manual curation, prefer certain publishers, and update their news cycle regularly, while being conscious of potential biases. Navigating intermediaries, which comprises 21.3% of the codes, includes Google News, diversity, social media, filter application, and popularity bias awareness. Journalists frequently utilize Google News and social media platforms to gather information, aiming for diverse sources and applying filters to refine their search, while acknowledging popularity biases. Context dependence, with a prevalence of 17.3%, covers news values, preferred frames, dynamic values, curation niches, and subjectivity. Journalists consider news values, preferred frames, and dynamic values when deciding what content to include, striving to create a unique niche and acknowledging the inherent subjectivity in their work. Readers' interests, accounting for 23.55% of the codes, involves tailoring content to reader interests, ensuring readability, providing novel insights, and incorporating user feedback. Journalists aim to engage readers through humor, diverse interests, and background information, while adding their unique voice to the content. Lastly, journalistic experience, with a prevalence of 21.3%, emphasizes credibility, insider knowledge, preferred authors, adding insights, and distinct writing styles. Journalists prioritize credibility, insider knowledge, and preferred authors in shaping their curation practices, adding insights and maintaining a distinct writing style that reflects their expertise and perspective. This codebook provides a comprehensive framework for understanding the complexities involved in creating engaging and informative content for diverse audiences, shedding light on the intricate workflows and decision-making processes of journalists in news curation.